What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Command Center Wargaming. I am Brother Stevanius, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the tactical elements of the controversial Atramentar Terminators in Horus Heresy 30k 2.0. So these Terminators, I've been wanting to cover them for quite a while. There's a lot of mixed feelings about them on the internet, as well as the Atramentar Terminators as well, which I've actually covered in one of my other videos. You can check that out. Now, people might know on the channel that I think Atramentar Terminators are pretty okay. I don't think they're the best in the game, obviously, but I just don't think they deserve the trash talking that everyone gives them. I've actually got battle reports as well on the channel in Zone Mortalis, specifically where I have Atramentar Terminators with no character attached, literally going up against Argvotal and Galvorbak and holding their own for 3 turns and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, the Atramentar are another one of those Terminators that fit that bill. They're pretty much on the negative side of things, as what I can tell the general consensus is. But I wanted to do this video just to have a look and see if we can put some life into these guys. And, you know, are they really that bad? Are they really that bad? Let's have a look at them and find out. So I feel as though with a lot of Terminators in the Horus Heresy, there's a stigma around them, that especially some of the more Horus Heresy larger YouTube channels puts on them, that if they don't function like Fire Drakes or Huskulls or Fulminatus, they're bad Terminators, okay? I don't operate like that, okay? Because if, you know, you have to look at each unit as a surgical piece within a unit role, all right? Yes, Terminators are designed to be more durable of units, all right? They are more elite, but they aren't all meant to be, you know, hammer units, hammer and anvil units. They can have surgical elements as well and other tactical elements that we have to look at. So in this video, we're going to cover the base stats. We're going to look at the special rules. We're going to look at their loadouts. We're going to look at the army synergies, and this is where it starts to get a lot more spicy. We're going to have a look at the tactics, and we're going to have a look at their performance in Age of Darkness and Zone Mortalis, respectively. Then I'm going to go through and give them a final rating. I'm going to give them a does it blend rating, and we'll have a look at an overall score of the unit. So, Atramentar Terminators, the base stats. All right, so we're coming in at Weapon Skill 4. Now, this is probably one of their largest downfalls, but there are certain rules which can help to throw this back up. But I will say from the start that it's very disappointing that an elite unit will have Weapon Skill 4, especially a Terminator, especially when they're going to be going up against other Terminators, mostly in that bracket. Like their weapon skill, their nemesis units are other elite units, and a lot of other elite units in terms of like even Terminators are going to have weapon skill 5. All right, but that doesn't mean automatically that these units are in the trash. All right, but it is a very, very negative thing against them. All right, their movement 7, so they're in Taratos. All right, ballistic skill 4, strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds, initiative 4, 2 attacks on the Atramentar Terminator, 3 on the Trucidor. All right, 2+ save, they have a 5+ invul. So essentially, their stats are the same as Taratos Terminators. All right, we'll discuss this a little bit later, all right, and how this sort of comes into play with their points cost. But for now, you know, we'll just keep going with some of their weapons and stuff as well. So we have the Combi Bolters coming in, rapid fire, AP 5, 24-inch range, power sword, okay, rending on a 6, in melee AP 3, which is actually pretty alright, you know, for a free weapon, I feel. In the Horus Heresy, I think 2.0 power swords got a bit of a glow up as well. Alright, now here we have the special rules. So they have Bulky 2, which is very good for outnumbering, especially the fact that you'll see later on that we can take these guys in blobs of 20-man Terminators, which means that as long as you can fit them on the table, you're pretty much going to be outnumbering anything, right? It's going to be like, yeah, a 42 unit Terminator squad is, you know, in terms of outnumbering, with a character attached, right? So it's pretty crazy. So yeah, but I don't know if I'd necessarily always run them as a 20 man if I'm going to take them. Again, for logistical and spacing reasons, which we'll talk about further on in the video. Now we've got Cloaked in Murder. So this rule says, when a unit composed entirely of models with this special rule declares a charge targeting a unit that is already engaged in combat, so the unit that you're charging into must already be fighting in combat, so it needs to be engaged. The charge roll gains a +1 modifier, so you take an inch off the measurement in which you need to charge. Okay, so a 9-inch charge, you know, at a deep strike, you know, will become an 8. All right, which is very, very helpful. And the unit gains a +1 to hit for the duration of the turn in which the charge was made. Okay, so this only happens on the first turn of combat, the charging turn. All right, but it can help you to offset that weapon skill 4 modifier. So if you're charging into someone who's weapon skill 5, all right, and you know you will offset that being weapon skill 4 with this rule, you will then hit them equally. All right, you'll go +1 to hit basically as well. Okay, so it doesn't work the whole combat though, which is a negative. It's not like a true countermeasure for weapon skill 5. But you know, if you're gonna swing first to these guys, so if you take chain glaives with them, which come for free, which we'll talk about later, chances are you're gonna swing first against a lot of other Terminators with thunder hammers and things like that. And I'm hoping you're gonna have enough bodies into base-to-base combat to be able to at least, maybe not blend the whole unit, but at least get them down to a point where, you know, their strike back is not going to be as brutal on you as what it would have been at a full strength squad, right? That's the theory. That's the hopes of it. But, you know, this unit is a good unit, I feel, but it's quite a situational unit. It takes a lot of high ceiling tactical play to get these guys to a competitive level. All right. Now, the other thing that they have is Deep Strike. Now, they have Deep Strike native in their base stats. So, yes, we can get Deep Strike in other ways with Sevatar and things like that. However, Deep Strike is still a pretty huge rule to have on Terminators in Horus Heresy 2.0. And, you know, it's a massive advantage. And I'll talk about some more tactics later, where we can actually use this to have like multiple smaller squads of these guys and have Sevatar on the field and advantages that they can come in later for the Deep Strike. They have Fear 1 natively inbuilt into their stat line, which is really, really good because, you know, Night Lords cause fear and some stuff in Night Lords does cause fear, but not everything in Night Lords causes fear automatically. So depending on what, you know, what characters you have in there. So it's really good to have a unit here that has Fear 1. So that's handy to have in here. Okay, so we've got the Inexhonorable. So a unit that contains only models with this special rule ignores modifiers to leadership when making morale checks or pinning checks. That's very, very, very strong. Okay, and we've got the Talent for Murder. So when a unit made up entirely of models with this special rule attacks during the fight sub phase or makes a shooting attack, they basically get +1 to wound or armor penetration rolls. That comes with the Night Lord Rite of War. So that does help. And you think about you're coming in with a 20-man or a 15-man squad of Atramentar. You've encircled someone in AOD. And so you're going to get most of your attacks in. You're now coming in at +1 to hit. And you're now coming in at +1 to wound as well with Shred. So, you know, if you take Lightning Claws or some of the other weapons, Chain Glaives, and that starts to, you know, become quite a little mincer there. All right, so it's really, really good. They've got Relentless, so they can shoot while moving heavy weapons. All right, and Sworn Loyalty is their other special rule, their main one, which basically says is if Sevatar is the army's warlord, Night Lord's Atramentar squads may be selected as non-compulsory troops choices and count as Legion Terminator squads for the purpose of Master of the Legion, okay, and Warlord traits as well. Twin Linked as well is another rule. They have their bolters, but the Sworn Loyalty rule here, now note right here it says that Night Lord's Atramentar squads, right? So not just one squad, squads. So you can split them up. And Sevatar does not need to be attached to them to confer the Deep Strike. All right, so this is actually really, really good. All right, so we'll talk about this in the advantages section of the video coming up. We'll have a look at the loadout. So we've got chain glaives. Now the chain glaives come included in the cost of the unit. All right, the cost of the unit, actually, I didn't mention that. It's 120 points base cost. The cost of the chain glaives is incorporated into that stat line by default, so you don't have to pay for them. And I personally believe that this is probably one of, if not the best loadouts that you can give the Atramentar Terminators. All right, they will get their chain glaive weapons for free. They usually cost about 10 points, all right, to put on another Terminator. And this is where the difference, you can see where the difference between paying for a normal Terminator, Taratos Terminator, and then a Atramentar Terminator will come in, because a normal Taratos Night Lord's Terminator will come in at about 10 points less than an Atramentar. So just by putting these chain glaives on, you're already now equaling out that points cost that you would pay for a normal Legion Terminator. All right, and you get a whole bunch of other special rules with that, as you could see as well. Deep Strike, Fear, right? The Murder trait, with a +1 hit. It also stacks up with Bloody Murder and all that kind of stuff, where you get an additional attack on them as well. So it goes pretty crazy there. All right, so definitely I think chain glaives are really good on this unit. Maybe pepper some lightning claws in. But look, to be honest, if we're going to use lightning claws, I don't know if it's that thematic for these guys. They do get a bit of a cost bonus to them. So if you take one lightning claw, it's actually for free now. All right. And if you have two, they got reduced 5 points down from 15 points to 10 points. That came out in the updated exemplary battles book. Okay, so you need to check that update in the book for that. But they did update it, the one with Fulgrim on the front. So chain blades, they can also take them for 10 points, which are pretty brutal. For 10 points, they'll come in with Shred there. Power weapons, there's assortment of the generic power weapons, but at that point, just take normal Taratos, right? What would be the point? You've also got Magna Combis, Minor Combis, 10 points, 5 points, a standard deal. Volkite charges, 2 points. Now the True Core, which is a sergeant, can take the Headman's Axe, which is pretty decent, for 10 points. So it's basically a striking initiative weapon. But I believe it was AP3. That's the thing. It's like high strength, but it's AP3. So you're trading off like the AP2 of a power axe, for the ability to swing it first. But it has a very good hit rate because of its strength. And then you've got grenade harnesses as well. Now, 1 in 5 Atramentar Terminators can take a heavy weapon. All right, so bringing them up to 45 points each, heavy flamers for 10 points, plasma blasters for 15 points, and Reaper autocannons for 15 points. This can be viable. It could help you a little bit. I think the best option here is a plasma blaster. I'm not really sold on flamer weapons in 2.0, even in Zone Mortalis. So if you were going to do it, put the plasma blaster on. But I feel as though it's best to keep these guys as baseline cheap as possible. Remember, guys, they're only a 5-up invul. You've only got a 2-up save. All right, so well, not only a 2-up save, you know, but it's still 2-up saves can be breached pretty easily. All right, so with rending and things like that. So, all right, so we're going to talk about the pros now of the army, and so a lot of their synergies, all right, as well. So what are the advantages of taking this unit over other Terminators? Okay, so they're a really, really good auxiliary unit. So they're a really, really good unit that are going to come in from reserves and back your forces up on the table. All right, because they do come in. They're one of their special rules with a +1 a hit does synergize with something that is already in combat. It can also throw your adversary up as well, because especially if you just have a couple or even 2 of these squads that are waiting there, ready to deep strike down from reserves, you know, your opponent is always going to be having to think about where these guys are going to come in. All right, so it's one of their biggest strengths at the moment, being a good reserve unit. So the other thing is with the deep strike, as mentioned before, it comes native, so we don't need to confer it with Sevatar, which means that we don't actually need to take Sevatar with this unit. I call it the Sevatar tax. So if you don't want to take Sevatar or Pride of the Legion, right, to get your Terminators as troops, you can just bring these guys in. They become troops. Okay, you can add a Herald to them to make them scoring as well. Some Herald's much cheaper than Sevatar. Although personally, I would still take Sevatar because I love Sevatar. He's just awesome. He's just like a destroyer. He's an auto take for me in Night Lords. But, you know, you can kit a Praetor up pretty well to be able to do some damage as well. But it allows you to save some points there. And it allows you to have them as troops without taking Pride of the Legion, which is super strong for Night Lords, because it means that you can then have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, because you can then run your Night Lords Rite of War, which gives you all the night fighting and everything. You can have Terror troops then as well, you know, coming in as troops, or Raptors if you so wish. You can also have these guys in as troops, so it's freeing up elite slots for you to take other units, right? So like Dreadnoughts and things like that, or whatever you want to do. So it's pretty huge. It's actually pretty huge, this ability here. So the other thing is the 20-man to 15 model unit size, great for outnumbering and reducing the pinning test tax, right? Because you're always here and you're always going to outnumber, you don't have to worry about having rotor cannons and things like that, or other pinning weapons like the Scorpius backing you up to rely to get your buffs off, because this unit is always going to outnumber, you know, whatever it does. Okay, it can also be given an extra attack on the charge with the Bloody Murder, depending if your character has it, okay, which then attaches it to the squad. All right, and the other thing as well, Sevatar can also give these guys preferred enemy if you so wish. So if you really, really want to come in and kill something, you know, you could come down, preferred enemy first turn, and just completely blend it. We'll talk about, it isn't as strong though, because, you know, of the fact that, you know, you're already shredding with most of these weapons anyway, but it still is a thing, you know, depending on what weapons you want to take. Now, one of the biggest advantages to these guys that I think as well is basically using them as what I call a meat shield. All right. Now, by you being able to take 20 Terminators or 15 Terminators, all right, forget the fact they might not all be able to get into combat. But if you've got a higher value character in that squad, that's now an additional 10 wounds with 5-up invols that opponent needs to chew through to be able to get through your character. All right, so, you know, you have your 10-man squad, you have a 15-man squad, that's now 30 wounds. Even if you're brutaling, doubling people out, you're thunder hammering these guys, that's still a lot of wounds you've got to get to before they can get to Sevatar, or your Herald, or your Chaplain, or whatever it is you want, or your Primaris Medicae, whatever it is you want to attach to these guys. Okay, so this is what I feel an overlooked advantage of this unit, that I don't think a lot of people have actually picked up on. they're basically just saying, oh, it's a 5-man, 5-up invul, a 2-up invul. But I don't think people understand that just adding wounds to a unit is actually going to increase its survivability as well. Doesn't matter how weak they are. It's like a meat shield. Okay, so that's basically the way it could come on. So the other thing is, the bigger the unit, the more that the character that is attached to them, the more their buff is going to increase in value with the squad size, because you're buffing more units in the game, right? So if you do have a 20-man squad, right, and it does confer that buff, then you're going to have like an absolutely huge aura like effect, like a chaplain re-rolling all hits. You're re-rolling all hits with hatred on a 20-man unit, not a 10-man unit. So fear 1, which is included, which we spoke about, because they're Terratos, you're able to run and sweep. The other thing is too, now, although it kind of sucks because you could just take lightning claws with, normal Terratos Terminators, the thing is to think about as well, it still is, with the reduced points cost, a pretty epic option with Atramentar. All right, because when you think about when you stack all these buffs up with their charge buffs as well. So if you have bloody murder, you have they're on the charge special rule, all right, plus the extra attacks from 2 lightning claws, and then the Legion trait, because they're going to be outnumbering that squad plus 1 to wound. You're going to get you're almost likely, hitting on 3s, mostly everything, right? Because of the plus 1 to hit. Then you're going to be wounding on 3s with shred with a reroll, okay? And then you're just going to get a crazy amount of attacks as well on the charge. So stuff is going to go down pretty fast if you do lightning claw these guys up. So there are actually a lot of pros of this unit. It's not actually all that bad, guys, okay? They're actually pretty decent, to be honest. Now, the issue is the army cons. So the army cons, the biggest con here is the weapon skill 4. All right? It doesn't matter that they have that trait which gives them the bonus, to hit on the first turn. The fact of the matter is that you're still going to be easier to hit by other units, in weapon skill 5. Now, hopefully that those other units with Thunder Hammers and Power Fists will be striking at initiative 1. So hopefully you can kill enough of them. But this still is a massive con, and you got to think to yourself, well, is having a chain glaive and that uniqueness and that extra chance of an attack worth me paying an extra 10 points for a Terminator? Or perhaps, taking another equivalent unit like a Contemptor Terminator, who also gets mad shooting as well within 10 inches. Yeah, and power fists and stuff like that. So Esclaton power claws, shredding power claws. So you've got to have a think about that. And I think it just all depends what you're doing with this unit in the game. Okay, so which brings me to the other disadvantage, which is the fact that even though these guys do have strengths, a lot of those strengths are hidden strengths or strengths which are peppered on throughout the data sheet. The fact remains that, it's a very, very close advantage to being able to just take Terratos Terminators for 10 points less. And that is the truth, guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say, oh, they're great, they're amazing, things like that. They can be very good, but they're extremely situational, okay? So they become a little bit of a better deal when you put the lightning claws in, all right? But even still, if I was going to fill lightning claws just for the thematic purposes, I'd probably just go, regular Terratos. I'd really want chain glaives with these guys. I feel as though, from a lore perspective, for a thematic perspective, Atramentar just should have the chain glaives. But with that said, you do you. You could also just run normal, Terratos, I guess, and just have them modeled out to be Atramentar as well, with the shoulder pad with the lion on it. The thing is, though, I think it's also very important to understand that, there were already Atramentar. We already had Atramentar before these units. These are just a flavor of Atramentar, because it even says, like, in Sevatar's rules, it literally says, like, whatever unit he makes, whatever Terminator he declares to be Atramentar is Atramentar, and the buff that you get for being Atramentar is basically the preferred enemy first oncoming in Deep Strike, right? So that's the thing. That's what makes a unit Atramentar. So you could have Cataphracti Atramentar. You could have Taratos Atramentar. You know, I don't think you could take Indomitus, but still. Or you can have your Contekar. They become Atramentar. And then you have these guys, which are the Atramentar, because Sevatar is the master of the Atramentar. And that's how you get your different abilities on different classes of Terminator armor. So they always were there in the beginning. All right. So we always had Atramentar initially in the main books anyway. The other thing is as well with this is that there was a bit of a debate with people, because they used to be on a data sheet. When you played the game, they say, oh, well, you can't run these units because they're not in the books. Well, now they are in a book, right? So there's no excuse for running these guys as well. Okay. So the other thing as well is that, so fear can be given to any Legion Terminator in other ways. So although these guys do come with Fear 1, there are other ways to get fear on Terminator units. You'll have to pay for it, sure, but there are other ways to do it. Sevatar himself, attached to a squad of Terminators just on the floor. I usually attach Sevatar to Cataphracti because it gives them like that 4-up invulnerable save cover. But he will just grant fear 2. Right, so there are other ways of doing it. One of the other strategies is with a Loyalist Night Lord squad to ally in Sisters of Silence, and then they give fear and all this kind of stuff. I'll talk about that in another video when I do my general Night Lords video, my overview of the whole faction. And the other con is with these guys as well is that 20-man units are going to face seriously logistical and spacing issues, guys. Okay, so the outnumbering is only going to be useful if they are going to be able to attack, to get those attacks in. Now, in Age of Darkness, it's probably going to be a little bit better because you got more open space. It's very easy to sort of get a unit sort of to come up and initiate that combat, and then deep strike a 20-man or 15-man blob around them, okay, and get that ability off. But in things like Zone Mortalis, that's going to be really hard to do. I mean, luckily, we can't, kill ourselves anymore when deep striking in, all right? So, like end up in walls and things like that. So they won't all die. But still, in terms of positioning, and who can be within engagement range and base-to-base contact of each other, and who can fight like around walls and things like that as well, that's going to be some serious issues. Like, I mean, I can't see myself taking these guys at all in Zone Mortalis, to be honest, unless it was in small units or just because I was playing more of a narrative match. The other thing to think about as well, which is a massive con to these guys to get their +1 hit rule off, is that you got to remember there's going to likely be another unit in combat with the Atramentar as well, who are also going to be taking space. So, like if I have a squad of like Night Raptors or something, which have deep struck in and then engage with these guys to already be in an attack, or a terror squad or something like that, or even just an assault squad, whatever it is that's in combat, they're already going to be taking a lot of room. So even if you have that 360-degree engagement bubble threat radius, you might not be able to take advantage of it because you're already in combat with half of it. So that's why, again, these guys, they're a very, very high ceiling unit. You've got to really, really think about what you're doing if you want to run these guys in mass. All right. So, and the other thing is as well, the other con, a fully maxed unit of these guys with 20-man squads, they're going to be like 800 points or over. So depending on how many points you're playing, you know, do you really want to have like half your army in one place as well? So perhaps it's better to split them up, but if you split them up, then that takes away one of their biggest advantages, which is the fact that they can be taken in 20-man squads. Okay, so overall tactics, guys. How would I play Atramentar? So first of all, I am going to do up a unit of these Atramentar. I say these Atramentar because I've already got 3 other units of Atramentar, normal Terminators, and Contakar because they're with Sevatar. First thing, meat shields. Like I said, get yourself a mad character, get yourself a mad Praetor, okay? Chuck him in a 15-man body of these guys. 20 might be too much. You're still going to outnumber with 15-man units, models, and literally just charge at things and enjoy getting hit back with, you know, an abundance of wounds that the opponent needs to chew through. I actually do this similar tactic with my Taratos Terminators. I always make a couple of them just base with power mauls, like just really cheap. So when I do get swung back on, it's like, oh, okay, yep, there go the power maul Terminators, so that they don't start deleting my lightning claws straight away. All right. Easy outnumbering, as we said before. Also Death Star blobs. And the other thing that I would actually do in AOD, so I would actually run these in a Mastodon, because you could fit 20 Terminators in the Mastodon, and have like this massive mobile Death Star driving up the board. All right, perhaps you can have some Tech Marines and stuff like that healing them up. And then all of a sudden, you know, your Mastodon goes up to the center of the board or as far as it needs to go. And then your Atramentar Terminators, just 20 of them just assault out. And it's just going to be carnage and bloodshed. Look, is it the most competitive thing to do? Maybe. I haven't tried it yet. But it's freaking fun. Okay, that's a fun thing you can do with them. And as I said before, in Zone Mortalis, if you really want to use these guys, take them in smaller teams. Have them as sort of threatening units, sort of like bully units that are going to come down individually to, you know, aggress the enemy at different choke points and things like that. Okay, those are pretty much some of the unique tactics you can use with these guys to be able to give them some play. And the other things you could do with other Terminators as well still counts. You could do a lot of those tactics as well that you do with normal Taratos to these guys as well. All right, so remember they can take, you know, general power weapons as well, so they could still, you know, have some just baseline weapons there as a meat shield, okay? So final rating, all right, what would I give them? So I will give Atramentar Terminators 6 out of 10 on the blend, okay? I think that they are a playable unit. I don't think they are quite in the bin at all. I think they are on the edge of the bin, okay? Unlike Contakar, which I actually would be my go-to choice over these guys. I think that the biggest problem is with these guys is, unlike the Contakar, who other people say don't fill a niche, but I believe Contakar fill a niche, which is the 5-up invol, okay, on a deep striking native Terminator unit with a shredding power claw and, 40 culverin shots and, strength 6 and all that, okay? So if you don't call that a niche, I don't know what you call a niche, but whatever. But I think that these guys, it's a lot harder to find a niche for because the niche slot is already filled by the Contakar. Okay, so these guys become extremely situational, extremely. But that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that there's a very limited use for them, reason for them, aside from thematic purposes and narrative purposes, why we would choose these in our army over other things, okay? The rule of cool exists, but I'm speaking more of from a competitive standpoint. All right. If these guys had weapon skill 5, I would put the Atramentar into A tier. I don't understand with Games Workshop or Forge World, it's the same thing now, you know, why they would go through a unit, revise them, and just give them like such a small buff of just 5 points less on paired lightning claws, when honestly they could have just left the whole unit untouched. They could have given these guys weapon skill 5. They could have even raised them in points, hell, another 10 points or something. They could have made them 230 points, given them weapon skill 5, and that would have been a much better fix for them. It would have been a much better fix for them. But they didn't, and here we are. So we can only just work with what we've got. Okay, and I don't think they're a bad unit at all. I just think they're a high concept. Again, one of the major things is just that niche factor, Raptors, Terror Squads, things like that. You know, they're just going to do a very similar thing. Atramentar Terminators, you know, are going to mince people in range as well as melee. So, yeah. I guess if you don't like the content car models, you want to do a conversion like this, which is sort of half content car, you could run them as well. But anyway, guys, look, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to be doing more of these in the future. It's great to be back on the channel, putting videos out more regularly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And you guys have a great one, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.